Hi, my name is Kira, and I will be talking about the 1960s modeling industry and the discrimination black models faced. I decided to cover specifically this topic when I saw Doniel Luna in one of Linda's fashion history presentation. I saw other past examples of students' presentations, and not many had covered this certain topic. I was very interested on seeing how the modeling industry had changed for the better for the past couple of years, and and who were the first models that pushed for diversity. Contents of my presentation. I will be mentioning different Black American models through my presentation, such as Doniel Luna, Beverly Bowders, Naomi Sims, and Jennifer Jackson. My topics will be based around racism within the modeling industry, how were Black American models portrayed and treated differently, and the racial identity controversies models faced. Conclusion will be the 1960s Black American models and how they created an impact for modern times diversity. The academic sources that I use for my presentation are Encyclopedia of African American History book by Paul Finkelman, The Tragic Tale of Doniel Luna by Ben Aragundade, The Politics of the Furs, The Emergence of the Black Model in the First Civil Rights Era Fashion. This is a fashion theory by Janice Chetty. Black Models Matter, Challenging the Racism of Aesthetics and the Facade of Inclusion in the Fashion Industry by Scarlett L. Newman. Bachelors and Bunnies, The Sexual Politics of Playboy by Carrie Pizzulo. This is a book. Cutting a Figure, Fashioning Black Portraiture by Richard J. Powell, which is also a book. The first black model, Donia Luna. Before the 1960 Civil Rights Act was implemented, black models were not allowed to be covered in a magazine or be allowed to walk in a runway. Although racism against any minority ethnic group was illegal, there was still a fixed indirect discrimination against these models, even after the Civil Rights Act was implemented. A lot of job opportunities opened up for these models. This was a very huge step considering how Black American models were only limited to magazines such as Ebony, who were targeted only to a black audience. Doniel Luna is considered one of the first Black American models to have achieved international popularity and to have made it to the cover magazine of Vogue in March 1966, a Western magazine. She was scouted by David McCabe, a photographer at Harper's Bazaar in 1964. Many photographers, including McCabe, were very mesmerized by Luna's fantastic, proportional, and tall figure. The first black model, Donia Luna. In 1965, Donia Luna debuted in a six-page Bazaar magazine and signed a contract with this magazine to work exclusively with Richard Avedon, a photographer. In 1966, Donia Luna was sketched by Nancy White for the same magazine and was the first black American model to be the cover of Harper's Bazaar, as you can see in here in this image right on the corner. She became a rising star, although her fame didn't last as she died of a drug overdose in her 30s. Beverly Bowders, 1962. In 1962, even before Luna made her debut, Beverly Bowders was the first Black American model to work with famous designer Pauline Trigger on 7th Avenue. However, Trigger stated she only hired Bowders as her interesting color looked well with the burnt oranges and greens that I was using. In this case, Beverly wasn't hired for her beauty or talent as a model, but rather only by the circumstances of her skin color. This is just another case of racism within the modeling industry, even though it is not seen clearly. Naomi Sims, 1960s and 1970s. Naomi Sims was another very important African American model in the late 60s. She was the first model to appear on Ladies' Home Journal in 1968, and this became her breakthrough into the modeling industry. She only went into the modeling industry so she could pay for her university tuitions, and even though she was very coldly rejected by many magazines and photographers, as they said there were no jobs for black models, she persisted and contacted Gustav Peterson, another photographer, which landed her the cover for Home Journal magazine. In October 1969, she was the cover model for Life magazine, which is a very huge accomplishment. She became an internationally recognized model. Although her modeling career was very successful, she went on to retire in 1973 to focus on her wig selling business for black women. Jennifer Jackson and Playboy magazine in 1965. 1 year before Luna's book cover release, Jennifer Jackson became the first black playmate of the month in the 1965 Playboy magazine edition. It came as no surprise from Hugh Hefner, who supported the civil rights movement publicly. Hefner said that he had always been blind to color bars, whether they were Chinese or African. Hefner did not discriminate based on color or ethnicity. He was one of the first magazine industry owners to have embraced black American models apart from Ebony magazine. Surprisingly, the pornographic industry was perhaps more advanced regarding on diversity and integrity for the black community rather than other magazines. Even if she was praised and supported by many fans of Playboy magazine, she still faced racial discrimination after appearing in this magazine. A student from the University of Mississippi had returned a copy of the magazine stating, "I do not need the foldout in the March issue, and I am returning it to you. There are too many Negroes at this university now." Clearly, he was being directly racist and was also referring to the student James Meredith, who in 1972 had accomplished to become a student at University of Mississippi after protesting his rights. Racism within the modeling industry and the fear of black models' inability to sell consumer goods. It seemed like Luna's stable career wouldn't last that long after advertisers had no choice to withdraw Luna's photography advertisements. It came after many readers canceled subscriptions, and Abaddon was not allowed to photograph Doña Luna anymore. This was just complete racial prejudice, as they were demonstrating how viewers were not engaging on the product only because it was promoted by a black model. Luna's cover picture for British Vogue in 1966 was a huge step towards integrity and diversity. However, it instigated a lot of debate and controversy for different reasons. Allegedly, she was made to cover her face, doing a B hand gesture to not offend the white viewers that were trying to buy Vogue magazine. Even though the Civil Rights Act was already in action and implemented for some years, there was still a lack of media representation in the pop and fashion industry world for black people. How were black American models portrayed and treated differently? Luna is often seen photographed and styled in a very stereotypical view of what people think black American women look like. In this picture, she is wearing enormous golden earrings with a black dress decorated again with gold. In other photo shoots, you may see her styled with fur coats and animal prints. It is the demonstration that art directors saw and portrayed Luna as this new exotic animal-like person, and it just shows the prejudice they still had of her. On the contrary, it was never the case for white models, who were showcased as innocent and classy with flower prints. In Newman's page 5 of her dissertation, we begin to understand how these models are unknowingly forced to be shaped into one of these two modes, to either comply with the white standard, which is, for example, straightening your hair, dressing more simple, and posing more gracious, or either become the dramatized stereotype of a black woman, being more exotic, looking fierce, posing in animal-like characteristics such as crouching, like the picture we see here. For them, there was no in between of becoming themselves. It was always rather this or rather that. How were black American models portrayed and treated differently? Unlike Luna, Naomi seemed to have learned the codes and symbols of the bourgeois feminine behavior. She fitted the white standards of beauty by dressing in simple and elegant colored clothes, straightening her hair, and doing her makeup as simple as possible. Compared to Denia Luna, Naomi was not cold, exotic, nor as described with animal-like features. She was recognized for her talent, and her modeling didn't include her to growl, crawl, or crouch. The racial identity controversies. It seemed like Luna had a problem with her racial identity. She denied in interviews being black or Negro and got usually irritated when this matter was pressed. Although many people saw Doña Luna as a role model for Black American models and for the civil rights movement, she did not want to be associated with the movement and wanted to completely be out of political arguments when interviewed. It seemed like she was afraid to be within the movement because racism would always follow people who supported it. In 1968, in an interview, she said, "The civil rights movement has my greatest support, but I don't want to get involved racially." Her statement was full of hypocrisy, as her entire modeling career was only possible by the sacrifices of people in the civil rights movement, and yet she wanted to distance herself from the black minority community that were fighting against discrimination. Some theories argue that Luna wasn't the first black model to be covered by Vogue simply because she wasn't fully black but rather mixed and had a lighter skin tone. Finkelman also mentions how people had argued that neither Donia Luna nor Beverly Johnson was the first. He states that they were light skinned and therefore not true black supermodels. Instead, models such as Naomi Sims are more highly credited as real black American supermodels only because her skin tone was darker compared to Luna's and Johnson's lighter skin tone. It seemed like lighter skin tone was considered a trait for mixed people, meaning they were not completely from black African descendants, and thus their ethnicity was often questioned and not being pure black and not being able to represent the black community. In conclusion, the 1960s black American models created an impact for modern times diversity. Donia Luna, Naomi Sims, and even Beverly Baudes were the 1960s Black American models who broke through the prejudicial barriers. Whether they supported the civil rights movement or not, we can clearly see nowadays the change these models had in modern society. They have challenged the racial discriminations the world once had about women of color, becoming pioneers of diversity within the modeling industry, and they have paved the way for new American supermodels such as Naomi Campbell and Tyra Banks. As Finkelman P. said, discrimination in modeling is largely no longer about skin color or nationality, but about dress size. We have come a long way and have strayed away from discrimination in the modeling industry. Nowadays, you can see a full black American model grace the cover of Vogue magazine without having to cover her face. While doing this assignment, I have learned how strong and persistent these models were, having to constantly face discrimination in their workplace. It has made me realize that in any future projects of mine, I should be thinking how important it is to be prepared before a photo shoot. We should all be thinking about who to cast. Is my project diverse? Am I representing everyone equally without reinforcing any stereotypes? Am I offending anyone? And I think learning from the past can teach us valuable lessons. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you guys for listening.